Throughout history, society has built up the belief that men are more tough, strong, and brawn than women. Centuries later, this harmful stereotype is still prevalent within society. The traditionally masculine traits that society expects the men of today to uphold have resulted in the feminization of mental illness. The damaging attitude shown towards men's mental health has over time formed a stigma, leaving countless men feeling discouraged to reach out for support. Presenting the Australian men's mental health crisis, a social issue that is increasing in severity while experiencing little to no support from the Australian public. I'm Nicholas Brown, and today I would like you to consider my documentary, Suffering in Silence. You may be asking yourself, what makes men's mental health so important? Well, to allow you to grasp the gravity of the situation, I would like you to direct your attention to this graphic. In 2019, it was recorded that 8 Australians take their lives each day. Of the 8, men make up an overwhelming 6 of the suicides. If this rate were to continue each day of the year, over 2,000 men would take their lives. Coupled with this is the fact that while only making 49% of the population, men account for a staggering 80% of total suicides in Australia. As a male myself, it breaks my heart to see the disproportionate rates of male suicide in Australia, and I hope this serves as a wake-up call to the nation on the severity of this social issue. From childhood to adulthood and everything in between, mental health serves as an integral element of a healthy lifestyle. Our mental health affects the way we think, feel, and act, and is a crucial element in determining emotional, physiological, and social well-being. Despite the dangers that surround a poor mental health, the infographic from the Australian Institute of Family Studies to my left displays that around 80% of men would be very unlikely to seek support regarding emotional problems. Whether it be your dad, brother, or even your best mate, males make up some of the most important figures in our lives. The fact that the vast majority of them feel too uncomfortable to seek help is something we should all be concerned about. Over time, society has subjected the male construct to a set of masculine norms, painting the picture that men are required to act tough and refrain from showing signs of weakness. This harmful culture has become known as toxic masculinity and is becoming more and more apparent that it is responsible for the unlikelihood of men reaching out for support with their mental health. The effects of adhering to toxic masculinity can become severe, as bottling up emotions often leads to physical stress on the body. Toxic masculinity is defined as a subset of masculine norms that outline certain expressions of masculinity while invoking a male's power over others. To demonstrate this, a male needs to restrict certain behaviors that are viewed as weak, such as crying or fear. Ironically, it is this fear of appearing weak that prevents countless of men from speaking out on mental illness. Recently, this topic has gained more publicity as renowned figures within contemporary media such as Donald Trump and Harvey Weinstein have exhibited toxically masculine behaviors. However, it is not just A-list celebrities and political figures that exert toxic masculinity. It can also be observed right here in our own backyard. The famous tradie is viewed by Australians as a quintessential Australian lifestyle. Tradies are often regarded by Australians as strong, up-and-at-'em, hard-working people. Despite this, construction workers are largely overrepresented in Australian suicide rates. The current graphic showcases how one construction worker's life is lost to suicide every 2 days, making construction workers 6 times more likely to die from suicide as opposed to work-related incidents. This alarming statistic has been attributed to the toxic mentality that has been instilled in the construction industry. With trade apprenticeships growing in popularity from 2014 onwards, changing the toxic nature of the construction industry is essential for the safety of Australian adolescents. One of the many victims of toxic masculinity within the trade industry is a 16-year-old building apprentice named Alex Michael, who took his life following an apprenticeship with the engineering company Downer EDI. Alex experienced firsthand the culture of apprenticeships, being subject to relentless abuse and profanities. Alex, who after 3 months had left the company in May 2008, had gone from a happy, bubbly personality to a sad, round-shouldered boy. Briefly following his departure from the company, Alex was diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression before taking his life in October 2008. In recent times, bullying apprentices within the trade industry has become normalized, with workers justifying it as initiation. Alex's heartbreaking story exposes just how ingrained verbal abuse and bullying have become within the trade industry as a result of its toxically masculine culture. The heartbreaking reality is that even today, there are countless voices going unheard, stories like Alex's that were unable to gain media attention. By accepting my documentary, we can change the culture that engulfs the construction industry and ensure that Alex's story is one of the last of its kind. Society has painted the picture that men do not want to express their emotions, when in reality, barriers such as masculine norms and stigma that surround men's mental health are what prevent men from reaching out. Stigma can arise from a variety of places, with the most common stemming from general society and the patient themselves. Social stigma refers to the negative attitudes and stereotypes directed at those suffering mental illness that have been formed by society over time. This branch of stigma is rooted in the misinterpretation that mental illness defines one's character. Coupled with this is self-stigma, which involves the sufferer subjecting themselves to negative views that surround mental illness, resulting in shame regarding symptoms. If I could refer you to the infographic to my left, it is clear that when compared to women, men are more likely to feel embarrassed and ashamed when experiencing mental illness. The core aim of my documentary will be to help tear down men's mental health stigma. Each day, we can work towards tearing stigma down by intervening early and showing support. By accepting my documentary, we can encourage families to introduce the topic of mental health to men at a young age, making them more likely to reach out for help when facing mental illness in the future. It is essential for men to support each other, as they are more likely to speak out about themselves with a group of peers. This can be elaborated on with male-only support groups and male helplines. I ask that next time you interact with a male who you may believe to be suffering from mental illness, consider this approach, as you may be able to save someone who is suffering in silence. Now, I call to you to make the change that Australian men are in such desperate need of. Through my documentary, we will be able to shed light on an issue that so many are oblivious to. When you take a minute to think about how men are 3 times more likely to commit suicide than women, the severity of this social issue should dawn upon you. By accepting my documentary, it will enact change by informing the audience of the importance of men's mental health and how we can overcome stigma, ensuring that men no longer feel as if they have to suffer in silence. It has been my pleasure to speak to you today, and thank you for your consideration.